Her arms were wrapped around her legs, which were pulled up tight to her chest. Her head was bowed down, with her forehead pressed against her knees. Her body, tucked up in a ball, was rhythmically rocking back and forth. She wasn't making a sound. Polly couldn't even hear the resonance of her sister-in-law's breathing. Instead, the room was filled with the most mournful silence. It was daylight outside, yet the blackout curtains had been pulled shut, as was the tradition when a close family member passed away, although in this case, passed away was too gentle a description for the life that had been so brutally taken. Passing suggested the natural end of a life well lived, a life that had reached the stage where it was time to move on. The life being mourned in the Elliot household, however, had not by any means been ready to move on. It had been snatched away, robbed, stolen, like so many others during this past year. It was a wrongful death, an injustice that could never be righted. In normal circumstances, the closed curtains served the dual purpose of letting neighbours know that a death had occurred, as well as keeping the inside of the home dark and cool, as the deceased's body was usually kept there until the funeral took place. In the Elliot household, though, the curtains had been drawn merely as a sign that the family was in mourning. There was no body to bury, as Teddy's shrapnel-filled corpse had already been laid to rest in a foreign cemetery in a place none of the family had ever heard of, Sidi Barani in Egypt, a town just a few miles away from where Teddy had been blasted to death by an enemy landmine less than 3 weeks previously. He had been one of the first casualties to die at the start of Operation Compass, the first large-scale military action in the Desert War following the Italian invasion of Egypt, which, despite being hailed a success, had resulted in the loss of 624 British soldiers. Teddy Elliot, aged 26, formerly a shipyard worker from Sunderland, County Durham, had been one of those 624 fatalities. As Polly edged her way into Belle's bedroom, a few rays of sunlight splintered through the gaps in the blackened cloth, illuminating the outline of her sister-in-law. As Polly's eyes adjusted to the darkness, she recoiled at the sight of her friend, her brother's wife, now her brother's widow. Belle looked almost feral, and for the briefest of moments, Polly felt fearful of this young woman she had known and loved for almost her entire life. She hesitated before making her way across the room, almost tiptoeing out of respect for the quietness. She then slowly crouched down. "Belle," she said in an almost whisper. "Belle." She stretched out her hand, still dirty from a hard day's work, and touched Belle's crown of thick blonde hair. The rocking continued. "Belle, look at me," Polly gently coaxed. The rocking went on, but the head moved and Belle slowly showed her face. Her skin was a ghostly shade of milky white, and the dried outline of mascara-laced tears had painted grey, salty streaks down her cheeks. Belle had been like this all day, and probably all night too. The previous day, after receiving the telegram telling them of Teddy's death, Belle had taken to her bed, or so Polly and her mum, Agnes, had presumed when they had watched her shocked figure disappear into her room on the ground floor of the mid-terraced house they all shared in the town's East End. Shortly afterwards, Polly had also sought solace in her own room, and Agnes, who had managed to hold herself in check in front of her daughter and daughter-in-law, had, once on her own, wept bitter tears, until the early morning light showed her another day had begun. Still shrouded in a veil of disbelief that her worst fears had become reality.